Hello, everybody. This is Gynarchic Awakening. I have been taking a month off to chart a new course for my life, to reflect on some of the mistakes I've made, uh, really where to go from here. Um, and I've come to pretty much an inescapable conclusion. I've come to the conclusion that uh, I need to focus on my self development efforts so that I can have some survival skills because I am seeing things happen um, around the world at an accelerated rate that I was not expecting for like another 5, 6, maybe even 7 years. And I can't wait around and expect people to just get it. What really eats me up inside is that we have all of this climate disaster stuff happening all around the planet. We are, our civilization is toast as we understand it. And we know how men in particular act and behave in general when there are no police forces around, when no one is stopping these individuals, what they are liable to do. So we know all of that. And yet, what is the common topic of conversation brought up by Gynarchists? We just need to have more women in office or whatever. It's not going to stop the climate crisis. It's not a viable solution anymore. And I know I said it in the previous video, but it just keeps rebounding in my head. And it awakened me to it enlightened me as to the state of mind of the people in my community. And it really goes down to this. If most of them are fantasists, if most of them are living in a delusion because they cannot handle the real world and this is indeed a coping mechanism for them, then that means in general, as a group, uh, Gynarchists are hopeless. So that puts me in a very bad position as somebody who believes that we can be organized into a community. Uh, I just don't think that that's viable. If you can't see the warning signs right in front of you, I don't know what to say. I really genuinely don't. For instance, if you've been paying attention to what's happening in Florida, these insane storms they're hitting them back to back. First, it was Helen or Helene. I don't know. I don't pronounce these names properly, probably. And then you have Milton. It's about to make landfall tonight. And then I've heard a Nadine, I believe, in 7 days. What I can't stand, what will continue to drive me up a wall, is that the topic of conversation isn't, hey, you a gynarchist? Cool, let's be survival buddies. That is literally the conversation we need to be having right now. We don't need to be deciding how to put women in office necessarily. What we need to decide is how to find each other, teach each other survival skills, and then get into groups before the collapse. That's what we need to be doing. We don't need, this system is literally finished. They People made their choices. We've all made our choices, but the system itself collectively has made the choice not to change and adapt. And if our people, if you want to survive, because let's be honest, the only reason why the Gynarchy community is a thing is because of the internet. Take that away, who are you going to talk to? Who's going to watch your back? So I'm going to be looking for those individuals offline who feel the way I do and think the way I do. And who said, you know what? If I have your back, you have my back. Men and women alike. If they're gynarchists, if they're serious, we get together, we protect ourselves and our families. That is your best case scenario. Community based gynarchy, in other words, an in person gynarchy community, is literally the only feasible um, goal that could be obtained by Gynarchists now. The democratic process itself has not and will not resolve anything related to global heating. I know this is a bummer. I know sometimes you don't want to hear this, but this is reality. It is a fatal decision that our people made not to live in balance with Gaia, the mother planet. And now that is being thrown back in our face. So if we are going to maintain this ideological stance, if we're going to maintain the thought process that we have, if we're going to develop it into something meaningful, then we have to be willing to adapt. And that's what concerns me. Maybe that's what I should title the video. My concerns regarding the adaptability of Gynarchists. Because Gynarchists seem to be very fixed on a particular idea of what they think something should be. And most of that involves a federal government. Most of that involves a highly advanced civilization that will no longer exist. And I don't hear enough conversations about the opposite happening, which is okay, that's not going that's done. So now how do we find each other? How do we get together in groups? And one thing I'm going to definitely do in my personal community is I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to try to organize people. And it's as simple as just looking out for each other's backs. No more, no less. I think that the best thing you can do, and this is to you as a Gynarchist, if you are a Gynarchist and you're watching my video, here's my advice for you. If you are not a total fantasist, if you are if you are more adaptable, if you are in the process of adapting or self-developing to survive the coming calamity, there are things that you can learn, and I will be doing that video soon on what Gynarchists need to know in order to survive. Because I get the feeling that some of them maybe don't know. I certainly have learned a lot that I did not know. Of course, part of the problem is I was raised by people who did not teach me things that I should have already known by the age of 18. So it's a terrifying thing. And it's not the only instance. My family, it's not unique to mine. There's plenty of families that do that. Like, for example, I keep hearing people say, well, I'm too poor to leave the Florida blah, 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 blah area. This is why I don't buy into the whole rich versus poor thing. I don't buy into it. I don't care for this narrative. It's a class warfare type of thing. Here's the reality of the situation. Maybe different classes are responsible at different levels for how society functions, or rather how it's not operating properly. Maybe some people are more responsible than others for doing damage, again, on different scales. Again, maybe that's true, maybe that's not. But what is true is that you have a responsibility as a human being, especially if you have a child, to save up emergency funds. So that when something does happen, you can get the fuck out of Dodge. I mean, that's kind of what I'm going through right now, because I have family. I have a nephew who lives in Florida, and no, not going to a shelter. They're just trusting that their home is going to survive the damage. So I'm a little bit on pins and needles right now, wondering if my nephew is going to be okay. And knowing that they didn't save an emergency fund really pisses me off. Now, this is why I save money. Some people in my family literally can't save money. It's not because they couldn't, it's because they don't know how. They don't make the concerted effort to find a way to make cuts here or there, financial decisions that will net them a profit of money, or to go out and do cannibalistic. In other words, hustle your fucking heart out. Because you know what? Before I ever have any kids, I'll have an emergency fund, and I'm not joking, $10,000 or more, so that if there's some kind of disaster that's being forecasted ahead of time, me and my kids and my wife or whatever, we're fucking gone. We're going to bail. And that doesn't happen with many of these people. They don't save money. They just piss it all away on drugs or alcohol, or they find some way to rationalize it. They don't try to find new places to shop at, to cut. Again, nothing, no effort. Just cave into the situation. There is nothing I find more unappealing than a person who has accepted their status in life. In other words, accepted their choices and doesn't think about them, doesn't understand the harm that those choices have, especially to the kids. If you're by yourself, that's one thing because you can take accountability for your own life, whatever, right? If you don't want to store up an emergency fund, if you don't give enough of a fuck about your own life to have an emergency fund ready so you can get out, that's on you. But if your child or your children end up dying because you don't have an emergency fund, that's on them. And the people living in that area should fucking know better because they do get hit by hurricanes and the weather will become more extreme due to global heating. So that's what I would suggest that you do. If you listening, you potential Gynarchist listening, woman, man, whatever, you find people in your local community, you learn survival skills, which I'll be talking about more in depth on the tools that you would need, on the techniques that you would need, the realities, the risks, and the dangers of that are coming in the future. You start building your community now. And I mean your in-person community. Don't look to the femdom community. They have their own problems with us, apparently. I figured that out a little over last month ago when some of them became hostile towards me. Don't look to any traditional venues. Just talk to people. Talk to people and try to find out if they're gynocentric. And if they have serious gynocentric leanings, befriend them. Build your own personal community within your area, whether that's a city, a state, a country, whatever. You build up that community. You strengthen the bonds of that community. And then you have these conversations about, well, just be honest with them. Just say, look, I need friends. I need allies. I'm concerned about a collapse. You know, I certainly wouldn't want to be by myself with all of the known savages out there and the possible prisoners who were going to break loose. I need you, and I would hope that you would need me. Just have a realistic, heartfelt, honest conversation about the reality that our civilization is collapsing, and you need somebody at your back. In other words, what I'm saying is Gynarchists need to be willing to adapt. They have to, if they want their ideology to survive. The reason why it's spread as far as it has is because of the internet. Because it didn't used to be socially acceptable to have this kind of thinking. It's become more acceptable because of the internet. But when the civilization goes, the internet will not be maintained. So you have an opportunity to build it up in your local community in any way you can. It doesn't matter if it's just 5 people, 10 people, 50 people. You build up your own personal gynocentric community based on your criteria, not anybody else's, your criteria, based on what you think somebody is, what gynocentric values you particularly draw yourself to, what kind of brand of gynocentrism you approve of. You try to find people in the real world, because guess what? When everything goes, those are the people who are going to live next door to you. They're going to be the ones you'll get into contact with. These Gynarchists on the internet, you're not going to be able to talk to them. They won't be able to help you. So that's my advice to all of you. And I'm going to be doing some videos related to that soon to try to help everybody out as much as I can. But my advice is be more adaptable. Stop thinking about Gynarchy solely within the context of a government structure or a big business structure. If you can't think community, then your ideology is likely going to die out, because it will be survival of the fittest. It will be groups against groups. And if you are by yourself out there, you're going to either be assimilated by a group, killed by a group, or trampled on by one, or possibly enslaved. And I don't mean in the good way, the consensual way. I mean the non-consensual way where you might be getting tortured. So there you go.